Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Geek Addicts, the pop culture podcast where we talk about small animals being shoved into little round objects. And hopefully, Nintendo doesn't sue us because they love to do that whenever you talk about Pokemon. I'm Bill. This is Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing all right. Weren't you talking about on the most recent episode of 3D, at least at the time of this recording, the most recent 3D episode, how Game Freak is like suing some people over Pokemon?
So it's not Game Freak. It's the Pokemon Company and Nintendo. They're suing the developers of the game Pal World,
Hmm.
um, which was essentially a Pokemon esque styled game where it was more of like a tactical-ish kind of game, but it was essentially Pokemon with guns.
I gotcha. Yeah, because I feel like maybe it was my friend Tom. I know somebody recommended that I play that game, and I'm kind of glad I didn't because if they're getting sued, then I doubt they're going to be around for long. So,
So here's the thing about that whole situation that there where I went from initially praising Nintendo to thinking they're idiots. This game literally is, aside from like some very basic ideas which aren't anything original that Nintendo owns, the game is barely anything like like Pokemon.
hmm.
It has some character designs that are kind of reminiscent of Pokemon, but there's no direct like copies or anything.
Hmm.
And it's like it's such a the fact that they're claiming like copyright infringement is ridiculous in my opinion. The thing where that gets me is this game's been dead for a while. Like there's people playing it obviously, but like it has been out of the public sphere. Like the hype for it is completely dead at this point. Like nobody actually cares about Power World that much anymore. And
Hmm.
initially, I had praised Nintendo because when this first came out, Nintendo had basically their only statement was they basically said, "We're aware of it, but we're not really pursuing anything right now,"
Hmm.
which I thought was genius because essentially they just disregarded it and let it naturally fall out of the spotlight on its own and disappear. Which I was like, okay, that's genius. Yeah, but it'll just die on its own and they'll move on. What they've done now is now they're suing them. They've brought the game back into the spotlight, and now people are going to play it again out of spite because people hate when Nintendo and companies do this shit.
Yeah, that's fair.
So it's like it's dumb. I went from like Nintendo, this is smart to Nintendo, you're fucking stuck in '95 again.
Yeah, that's about right. I just
Um,
want to throw out an apology at the top here. I am struggling with some sinus problems from the temperature fluctuations over here, and so I may be a little stuffy. I may have to clear my throat a little bit more often than usual. So just at the top, I don't let people know that.
gotcha. Yeah, it's
um,
been just one of those crazy situations.
yeah, fucking Nintendo.
There,
It's like I don't know. It just makes no sense to me.
the thing that I'll give Nintendo is at least they're full on honest about being scumbags.
That's fair. I
Uh,
mean, they it's not like they have anything to lose. They're not fucking hurting.
I don't know who's worse, Nintendo or Disney.
Disney,
Yeah,
because Disney's a
Disney's
cult.
then they're never gonna live down that the Spider-Man gravestone and thing.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I don't know. Nintendo may be dicks about stuff, but like Disney is just a cult. Like the people who get like super into Disney are like, I don't know, it's I don't know.
Yeah.
I've seen people who are way too into Disney before, and speaking of somebody who's been pretty much watching Disney movies nonstop for the past couple of years with my small daughter, it, I don't know. It's they're doing something there. There's some sort of
See,
fucking brainwashing going on.
there's a difference between enjoying Disney products like Disney films and stuff and making your entire personality Disney.
Yeah, my friend's mom is pretty
I
much
know
made her.
I've I've met multiple people over the years who their personality is Disney, and I'm like, this is sad on so many. No offense to anybody who may or may not fit this description, but I don't get it.
I
I'm
mean, I'm
just
not gonna say like I don't know. It's one of those things where like it's not like Disney. Like I don't know. If it's just like what we think of as Disney that you're obsessed with, then it's like yeah, it's a little bit weird. But I mean, Disney's also making Marvel. They're also making Star Wars now. They're also making, they made the Pirates movies. They made the Narnia movies. So like, it's not like it's just that stuff.
True.
So they've kind of like created like a broad scope of what Disney makes now. But like when people think Disney, they think like, you know, Peter Pan, Sleeping Beauty, Little Mermaid, and
Toy
all that
Story.
crazy. Oh yeah, Toy Story. Well, that's Pixar, but yeah,
Disney owns them though.
true. But there's like a weird separation between Disney and Pixar, even though they are
True.
basically the same. Um, but yeah, it's
Hmm.
I don't know, it's just one of those weird things. Um, so my One Piece journey has been brought to a screeching halt at the moment. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned on here before that I've been borrowing my cousin's Crunchyroll, and that's how I've been watching a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, because I texted him about it because I went to go like, you know, download my daily episodes or whatever for work, and it said like, oh, upgrade to premium, blah blah blah. I'm like, that's weird. So I texted my cousin about it, and he said, oh yeah, like I had like my credit card was compromised, so now I have. And of course, it was right before the billing cycle for Crunchyroll, so now he has to wait until the new one comes in before he could restart the account. So,
Ah,
um, but it gives me a chance to do some rewatches and catch up on some stuff that I haven't been watching because I've been focused so much on One Piece. Like I noticed a couple days ago, Oshinoko was finally put on Hulu, so I watched the first episode of that yesterday.
oh, how'd you enjoy that mindfuck or
Yeah,
whiplash?
that took a dark turn. That took a real
Yeah.
dark turn, and I was not expecting it at all.
Did you get to episode 2 yet, or did you just watch the first
I only just watched the first. I mean,
Okay.
that was like the first episode was basically a movie, but
It was, and boy, don't you love just like getting attached to this character just for her to get fucking taken away right at the end?
right, like I wasn't expecting this series to take. Like I have no idea where this series is gonna go now. Like I don't know. It was just like I didn't even know what to expect with this series because I knew nothing about it, like at all.
Can you believe
And
it's the same creator as Kaguya-sama?
that was like that's exactly what I was thinking the whole time. I'm like, this is the same guy or girl, whoever it is. I don't know. What was Akasaka a boy or a girl?
He's a guy,
Oh, okay.
I think.
Yeah, it's just it was just bizarre. Like I was not expecting. I definitely am intrigued, and I want to continue watching. Of course, it's one of those shows on Hulu that won't let me download it, so I have to watch it at home.
Hmm.
But you know, it is what it is. At least not every episode is movie length, so I should be able to get through the rest
No,
of it fairly
it's
quickly.
only. I won't spoil what happens, but the tone of the show takes an abrupt shift, starting with episode 2. Like once the actual story proper starts, the start of Oshinoko literally is like one of the biggest gut punches you'll ever have in like most recent like manga and anime.
Yeah, it was definitely like I was not expecting the heel turn it took. I did love the rave babies though. That was great. Loved that bit.
Did I tell you I got spoiled about the opening to Oshinoko in the fucking Formula One subreddit?
I think you did mention that. Yeah,
Yeah, that of all fucking places. I was like, I mean,
that's so bizarre.
I knew from the start that, I mean, spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't seen it, but I knew from the start that I dies like in episode 1, and like it's a very dramatic thing. I didn't realize it was that traumatic though.
Yeah, that was rough. And just like the whole thing where like it's the twins, and then like one of them is the doctor, and one of them is the patient that got the doctor into eye, and it's like a whole fucking like it's like a tapestry of fucking
It
events that fucking build to it. And I was not. This is a weird, a very weird and interesting take on the whole reborn as blah blah blah. Like
it
I don't
gets
know.
weirder.
It's
It gets
I'm
weirder.
sure it does. I'm sure it does.
It's actually kind of turned me off to it a little bit or as it goes. I won't say why, but I'll just say that it's interesting. It also takes place canonically in the same universe as Kaguya, so
It's, all right, fair enough. I guess I'll see when I get there. But I don't know. I'm definitely intrigued, and I want to continue watching. I gave Cindy like a brief kind of synopsis about what the story is about. I didn't tell her what the dark turn was, but I did tell her there was a dark turn. like, um, like
I,
I explained like the whole like beginning bit to her. I was like, oh, like there's the doctor and the pop idol and all this other stuff, and I'm like, and she's like looking at me weird as like like the expression on her face is getting weirder and weirder as I'm explaining it. And then by the end of it, when she's like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "Yeah," and that's only like the first 10 minutes of the first episode.
Yeah, it, which is crazy to me too, because like the episode ends with like the credits song by Queen Bee. I forget the name of it, but it's like got that really like dramatic like orchestral like start to it, and then there's like just like the sub bass drop, and it's just so dark but
Mhm,
kind of like intriguing. It was on both me and Alex's top 10 anime outros earlier that we did earlier this year.
mhm. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna continue watching that when I have the opportunity. The only thing that sucks is I don't have a whole lot of opportunities to take control of the living room TV. So it's just kind
Yeah,
of one of those like when I can kind of things.
especially because that is such a dark show that's not good to have around the kiddos.
Yeah, well, I mean, Francis has another difference.
True, but my
And Xander just doesn't straight up doesn't care.
fair.
Xander's
I
at an age where he's starting to get into that kind of thing. So
fair. Yeah,
uh,
Oshinoko is surprisingly dark. Like it's dark enough that it makes adults uncomfortable.
yeah. But yeah, aside from that, since I had to kind of figure out like something else since I didn't have One Piece this week, I watched a couple movies. I watched Howl's Moving Castle for the first time. I enjoyed it
Nice.
very much. Um,
House is good. It's not my favorite Ghibli film, but it's one of the it's probably one of the ones I like more.
that's fair. Is it because it's like a Western fantasy kind of thing?
I didn't mind that. I liked it more until I actually read a bit of the actual novel that it's based
Yeah, I
off
was
of.
surprised. I didn't realize it was based on a novel.
It's based off an English novel too, which I find interesting.
Hmm.
I read that a little bit into that. Apparently, the novel, a lot of stuff that doesn't quite make sense in the movie is explained in the novel much better.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I mean, you know me, I like novels, so.
Hmm.
And I also watched One Piece Film Red.
Oh, nice. What'd you
Um,
think?
I thought it was great. And like as it was going on, well, first of all, I wasn't expecting what Uta is her name, right?
Yes.
I wasn't expecting her to be like the villain. I knew she was like the main focal point of the movie, but I didn't think she was gonna be the villain. Um, and also like as soon as she started singing, I'm like, I know that fucking voice. Like I know that singer.
It's
And
Otto.
I looked
Yeah.
at yeah, it's the singer for Kura Kura from the
Yep.
second season of Spy Family.
See, what's hilarious is you knew her as the singer for that, and when I heard Kura Kura, I was like, oh, it's the One Piece Red Lady.
Yeah. But no, I enjoyed it. It was a fun movie. It did kind of leave me kind of scratching my head a little bit though. Well, first of all, about when it takes place, because there was that one brief moment where Luffy went Gear 5 at the end. But like the way that the movie is presented, it seems like it's before Wano. So that's kind of confusing. And then also it ends with forgive me if I'm wrong. I don't know if I missed something or not, but it seemed like she went off with the red-haired pirates at the end. And if that's the case, like, is she gonna be there when they encounter the red-haired pirates later? Because
See,
that's gonna
y-
be confusing.
you interpreted it different than me. I interpreted it as she died.
It didn't seem like I don't know. Maybe I need to watch it
I
again,
don't
but it
know
didn't seem like she was dead.
the way I watched it is that they did it in a way where she died at the end so that they could write off the loose end.
I don't know. Maybe that just wasn't clear enough to me, but it's I don't know. That seemed kind of vague.
You'd have to ask Alex; she's the expert on it.
That's
Um,
fair. Um,
I mean, according to
it,
Alex, it's not canon regardless, but
well, I mean, Oda wrote the script, so I mean that's up to the watcher's discretion, I suppose.
yeah.
Um, and aside from all that, I rewatched the '90s Berserk anime,
Hmm.
which I know it's not your cup of tea, but it reminded me how fucking great that story is and what a fucking deep character Guts is. And now I've committed myself. I can't afford to buy the deluxe editions, but I decided I'm going to start like every week I'm going to buy another uh, Kindle volume of
Hmm.
the manga because I looked into it and I realized because I read a bunch of Berserk a while like years ago. But when I actually looked into how much I read, I only read like half of what's available right now.
Wow.
And I don't even think that much has come out since. So
Well,
yeah, there's still a
un-
lot more.
unfortunately, I don't know how it's going to end, but
Well, excuse me. Apparently, he did leave enough information behind for. I think it's his friend who picked it back up for him after he passed. But
Mm,
I believe there was he left enough information behind to get the at least the broad strokes of what he wanted for the ending. It's not going to be exact, obviously, and I'm sure the art's going to suffer a little bit because it's not the same person, but it is still going. It
mm.
is continuing. It's slower. I mean, slowly. I don't want to say slower because Mira was writing it for like 30 years.
Yeah.
And it's only just now. I think that there's a volume coming out next month, and it's like that volume will put it at an equal volume count as like the original run of Dragon Ball. So
Mm,
it's definitely a slower pace for a manga that's been going for 30 years. It's been going about as long as we know longer than One Piece technically
mm.
by actually quite a wide margin. Like I think it was like started like 7 years before One Piece, something like that.
True.
And there's a considerable less number of volumes.
Well, Oda's a fucking machine. So
Yeah, no shit. But yeah, I'm determined. I'm gonna go through it. I'm just gonna buy a volume a week and just because it's such a good story.
mm,
And I need to know what happens, and I can't
yeah.
believe I can't believe I've let it go this long without knowing. So I just got and whenever we found out that the fan made adaptation that was gonna actually do the series justice got hit with a cease and desist from Studio Gaga. So that's not happening anymore, which fucking blows. We're never gonna get a good fucking adaptation of that. So
Yeah.
the only way I'm gonna experience it is by reading the manga. So that's what I'm gonna do.
Mm. Yeah. Speaking of anime, we also recently, for those who know, we're part of the Superpod Network. That's superpodnetwork.com. Um, Me and Matt actually contributed to a recent blog over on the site talking about our favorite anime arcs, which was pretty fun. I
Mm-hmm.
covered the legendary wedding dress saga from the original Dragon Ball.
I covered the Garlic Junior saga of Dragon Ball Z. Funny enough, we both picked filler arcs for Dragon
Yeah,
Ball.
the best filler arcs.
Fair. Well, it's debatable. I really like the Otherworld tournament,
True.
but I mean, I think yours is probably the best filler arc overall for Dragon Ball,
Oh
unless
yeah,
you
because
count like the like little like 2 episode like filler bits in Super, like that little like chunk of like 10-15 episodes that's just
true.
all filler two-parters. Like I like those a lot, but that's not an arc, that's just a collection of two-parters.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. It was just fun to write about it. Like I always think back on the wedding dress arc just because it's like it perfectly ends off the original Dragon Ball series. And it's like a perfect kind of like transition from that to Z.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
also literally the only time Chi Chi's like ever been super likable.
Yeah.
Like just like throughout the entire thing. Like she has her moments in like the later stuff, but like she's always teetering that line of being like likable and just being like psycho bitch, like in the corner.
Well, well, she's a lot chiller in the manga than she is in
Oh
the
yeah.
anime. They were like really like amped it up for the anime.
And then Super made it like four times worse for some reason.
Yeah, no kidding.
But
Um,
she's like
but we will
super
be
chill
doing.
though in wedding dress. So
Oh yeah, for sure. We will be doing more of these in the future. We've already talked about doing like more parts to the anime arcs, and I've also thrown out suggestions for other future ones. So look forward to those.
hmm.
I'm still
I, I might already be in the process of writing my next arc for the blogs.
I still need to decide which one I want to go with. I'll probably just pick one of because the Garlic Junior one that I did, that was like a last minute change. Like I had a couple other ones in mind, and then I
Hmm.
was like, you know what? People don't talk about Garlic Jr. in a positive way enough, so I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, nice.
And like I know I'm kind of like the Dragon Ball guy in the network, and I was trying to veer away from that when we did the anime arc thing. And then I was just like, but Dragon Ball though.
Well, you know what's funny though? Like when I was trying to pick an arc for that, I was thinking like in Inuyasha because like everyone knows that's my favorite anime. I couldn't think of a singular arc that really stuck out to me because like honestly, the thing about
Inuyasha doesn't feel like a show with arcs. It
it
doesn't
really
feel like an arc show.
it doesn't. That's kind of why I kind of ended up not picking one because honestly, Inuyasha is one of those series that you kind of just have to watch the whole thing.
Yeah, it really is. Like it's like with Dragon Ball, you can just kind of like isolate an arc and just watch that on its own. And there's plenty of other series like that, you know, like Naruto, One Piece, like One Piece especially. Like each individual arc of One Piece is like its own like, you know, broad story with like a
Mhm.
huge cast of characters for each one. It's kind of fucking ridiculous how many characters he comes up with for each arc. To the
Yeah,
point where it's a little annoying sometimes.
I mean, because like one of the things I really like about Rumiko Takahashi's writing style is she basically her series are all basically one continuous story. Like there isn't really any cutoff points. Like there is technically arcs in Inuyasha, like the Band of Seven arc, which is
That's like the
arguably
only one I could think of.
yeah, and arguably it's kind of pointless when you really think about it. But
Mhm.
there's also like the Naraku incarnation arc where they fight off all the different incarnations. But
Mhm.
that's kind of just part of the main story as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just
it's
feel like
all
Inuyasha is one of those ones that just doesn't really work with like arcs.
yeah.
And like to a degree, I kind of feel like I know Spy Family technically has arcs, but they're so like small, it's like kind of hard to call them arcs.
Yeah, the only arc I can really think of in Spy Family that sticks out to me is like the cruise ship arc.
Well, there's a couple others later.
Yeah.
But again, like they're so short that it's you're hard pressed to even call it an arc, you know? Even the cruise ship one in the anime was only like what, 6, 7 episodes?
Yeah, which to be fair for some art anime arcs is pretty substantial because I mean like Wedding Dress was literally like five episodes, I think.
True. But yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely looking forward to writing some more of those in the future.
Hmm.
I definitely want to write more in general, just because I'm still pretty green when it
Yeah.
comes to that kind of thing. So I want to do it more so I get better at it. So
No, I
like
hear you.
I'm gonna have to go over the game club blog for like a second pass because I feel like the way I wrote it was kind of sporadic.
No, I hear you. I hear you. Um, yeah. So I guess now moving on, we've waffled enough. During what do you think the term that people use these days now? Is it waffling? Is it riffraffing?
I, I can't I can't even keep up with our generation's slang, let alone the new generation.
Yeah, I always call it waffling, but yeah, I think we've gone on enough there. We should jump into our topic because this one very potentially could be pretty substantial. We're
Mhm.
going to be talking Pokemon again, although we're actually going to be this time. We're not talking about the manga. We're taking a break from that for a while. Instead, we're going to be covering the games, kind of in like a general kind of overview of the entire series in a nutshell, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, both of us have kind of fallen off past this. I think we both fell off at the same point, actually.
Well, we
Um,
have there's always so the life cycle of a Pokemon fan is like literally this. It's actually a very common occurrence I've noticed with Pokemon fans where they start at a certain point, they fall off, then they get back into it like twice as hard, and then they fall off again, and then that's usually the permanent fall off part.
yeah,
Like, because I know like for a lot of like very old school like people from the beginning, they got into it with obviously with like the original Red and Blue. Then they kind of fell off around like Ruby and Sapphire. Came back for Diamond and Pearl, were super into it, and then they fell off years later.
Mhm.
I know for like our generation, I know for me personally, I got into it with Ruby and Sapphire, fell off sometime after Diamond and Pearl, came back and played the hell out of Black, White, X, and Y, and then after the Ruby and Sapphire remakes, I infamously played about 20 minutes of Sun and Moon and put it down, and I've just never really gotten into Pokemon ever again.
it's about right. That's fairly similar to what mine was. I started my actually it was my if I remember correctly my first video game that was mine was Pokemon Yellow.
Hmm.
I got it for my 5th birthday with a Game Boy Color. Um, and I kind of went through the gauntlet of the game, like the Game Boy Color ones and the Game Boy ones. Like I started with Yellow, and just by chance, because adults didn't know, back then. So I ended up with Blue and Red as well. And then I got Gold, and I didn't actually own Silver or Crystal until like later, but I know I played them. I
Hmm.
probably just borrowed them from other people.
See, that was kind of the benefit of owning the multiple versions was like Pokemon Infamous. I think it's still infamously to this day. You can only have one save file per cartridge.
It's technically yes, but now that Pokemon is on Switch and you can just have multiple profiles on Switch, that kind of does away with that.
True, but it's still kind of a pain in the ass.
True. But I mean, like Switch is super. I like the way Switch does like the whole profile situation, because there's one thing. Every time I boot up the Xbox, like when I was streaming Fable and stuff, every time I would boot up the Xbox, it would automatically sign into Xander's profile, and it was so annoying to me because I had to sign him out, then switch over to mine and whatever. I like this way Switch does it, where you don't sign into a profile like, I mean, technically you're signed into a specific profile when you turn it on, but whenever you select a game, it asks you which profile you want to play it under, and I like the way that that works.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think my first fall off point for Pokemon was Heart Gold. I played Heart Gold, and then I was like, all right, I'm done with Pokemon for a while, and then I don't think I picked it back up until X and Y. I kind of leapfrogged straight. I still to this day haven't played the original Black and White.
You're missing out too, man.
I know. I see at this point, it's like I know that out of all the Pokemon games, like that, those are the ones I need to play.
Hmm.
But it's the same argument I give to my stepson whenever he tells me to play like Scarlet and Violet and stuff. It just at this point, I've played so much Pokemon throughout my life and missed so many other great JRPGs over the years that I would just rather play one of the ones I haven't played rather than play another Pokemon game.
Yeah. It's it's really interesting to me because Pokemon really is it's like baby's first RPG in a lot of ways.
It was
Um,
the only RPG I played for a very long time until just a few years ago.
See, I had the benefit of playing Final Fantasy VIII, very young. So I was always indoctrinated to RPGs being these confusing, complicated messes. But Pokemon was always like a weird one because like the whole like Pokemania thing was a real thing. You ever seen the meme of like it shows like your childhood and like everybody's playing Pokemon, and then
Oh yeah.
it goes to high school and it's like the one kid is playing Pokemon and everyone's like making fun of him for playing Pokemon. And then you get to
Mhm.
college and everyone's playing Pokemon again.
Yeah. Well, it's like we said, that's the life cycle of the Pokemon fan. I mean that isn't a hard and fast rule. My friend Steve, who you've met on several occasions, he is still super huge into Pokemon. He buys every game that comes out. In fact, every version of every game. Like when Scarlet Violet came out, he bought both of them. Like he does that with everyone.
Hmm.
So I mean, some people stick with it, and I
True.
can understand why. But I'm just at a point right now where like I want a little bit more substance in the games that I play. Um, like I like when I played Chrono Trigger this year, like that was such a fun experience, and like I've never had like that kind of experience with a Pokemon story before.
It's amazing that a game that was made in like 1995 has so much more substance than a modern game that just came out for the Switch that barely functions.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
This
you're
will be my first of many digs at Game Freak, by the way. So get ready for that, guys.
so your first Pokemon game was Emerald, correct?
Not Emerald technically; it was Sapphire originally, and then I
Gotcha.
got Emerald when that came out.
How long did it take you to double back to the older Pokemon games?
So actually, probably farther than you'd think because it wasn't back in the day. It wasn't easy finding those older games.
Mhm.
So my first time experience playing Gen 1 was actually Fire Red Leaf Green.
Okay. That makes
And
sense because that those games were like really big when they first came out,
mm,
like having the redone version of Gen 1.
well, it also was a case of like back when you were a kid, you don't appreciate. I mean, to be fair, 8-bit graphics are kind of ugly in general, like even by today's standards.
True,
And
but there's a charming aspect to it though.
there is a charming aspect to it, although let's face it, Red and Blue are broken as fuck games,
Oh, for
um,
sure.
which is
Tentacruel.
hilarious.
Tentacruel is my main in the old Red and Blue.
Which is hilarious too when you consider the fact that our Red and Blue is based off of Japan's Blue version, which was the fixed version of their Red and Green. It's like the version we got was the fixed version, and it's still broken.
Mhm.
And then Yellow was an even further update that was still kind of broken.
See, I loved playing Yellow when I was a kid. Like that, I loved that was my first Pokemon game, and that I feel like was the perfect one for me because I mean I got into Pokemon because of the cards and the anime. Which I gotta say, like when I actually got the game, there was a level of disappointment because like I watched the cartoon and looking at the cards, like the designs and the art is so fun as a kid, and then you play Yellow and you're like, what the fuck is this garbled bullshit?
Which is
This is
hilarious
not the cute
because
animal I've come to love.
the best part is though Yellow they redrew all the sprites a second time so they look better. That like original Japanese Red and Green, those sprites are some of the fuggliest sprites I've ever seen.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Uh, I
Um,
still remember like whenever I play Red and Blue, I always because I always pick the grass type, so I always have a Venusaur. Fucking Razor Leaf criticals every time. It's
oh
amazing.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I always went for the fire types. Whenever I'd start, like if it was the first time I played like this, like a particular Pokemon game, I always played the fire type first, and then I would mess around with other stuff. Like
So you had a rough time in in Gen 1.
well, no, because I played yellow. What I mean, yeah, technically, yeah, it was a rough time because I had Pikachu, but
I
second gen
you know
wasn't
what
bad.
you know what the one Yellow is to me arguably the best version of like the original games in pretty much every way.
Oh, for
My
sure.
own my only thing I dislike about that game is the fact that you can't evolve Pikachu.
Uh, there is a way to do it. It's just
There-
you need
There's a way to do it, but it's not easy.
you just got to trade it. You trade it to a buddy, they evolve it, and then trade it back, and then it's a Raichu.
True.
But
The only thing is though, like back in the day, especially with link cables, it was a lot harder to find friends to trade with than I thought.
I still have my old link cable too.
I think I have a link cable somewhere.
I remember being like so confused about that, like when I was a kid, because uh, I was a sad kid who didn't have many friends until like third grade, fourth grade, something like that. Uh, so playing Pokemon back in the day, like I'd go to the Pokemon Center and I'm like, what's this counter on the other side of the healing center? Like he keeps saying like what is this like link stuff that I have? What does this mean? Why am I barred from this? I don't know what this is. It took me forever to find out what that actually was.
See, I just have inherent trust issues because the first time I did a trade on a trade with like a link cable, the guy who I traded with ran off with my Gengar and I never got it back, or my Haunter, I should say.
Yeah.
So
Those fun.
I always had inherent trust issues with doing trade evolutions because I was like, you just run away.
Well, not even that, not even just that either, is because in the old Pokemon games, to anyone, any kids out there who don't know, um, you couldn't tell what Pokemon it actually was because the little sprite that would be next to its name would just be like a basic sprite for like the type of Pokemon. Like there'd be like a group of Pokemon that would fall under
Yeah.
one specific sprite, and nicknaming a Pokemon, like, there's no way to tell what Pokemon it actually is. So there's tons of people who would just nickname their Pokemon Mewtwo, and then they'd send it to you, and it's a fucking Spearow
Yep. Or like my
or like an
favorite,
Abra or something. Like,
or even in the later games when you trade something and then they'd like sneak an Everstone in and trade it back to you just to be a dickhole.
Yeah, yeah. Like that one fucking bitch in Gen 4.
Yeah, they actually made a character.
That was the biggest fucking kick in the dick back in the day. It's just, oh, this person's gonna trade me a Haunter. Awesome. I'll just have a Gengar right off the bat. Nope. Nope. Not gonna happen.
Yeah. No, it's one of those it's one of those things that's just like Pokemon was supposed to be like a thing that that was supposed to bring people together, but I swear it just made people like distrust people and be paranoid as fuck.
Yep.
Did you ever
And
do a link
also,
cable battle?
occasionally. It wasn't very often.
I
I
remember
didn't use the
doing it.
link cable. Ironically, I didn't use the link cable very much until I was an adult, and I had like my little group of friends, and we all got Game Boys, we all got OG Pokemon games, and we worked together to actually catch them all for the first time, and
Hmm.
that was a fun experience as an adult.
See, I remember as a kid doing a link cable battle for the first time way back in the day, and I remember just how slow it was. Like it was
Oh yeah,
almost unbearably slow.
for sure. I mean, it was great once the the virtual console for 3DS, like when we got those versions and played against each other with that, like that was a lot more convenient to say the
Hmm.
least. And it was quicker.
Hmm. No, I know that for sure. So, trying to think where to go from here. So, obviously, like I think we had most of our experiences with like Gen 3 games.
I think as far as like childhood, yeah, I'd say we probably spent the majority of the time on the GBA games, the Gen 3 and the Gen 1 remakes. Just because like that was like Game Boy Advance was very current when we were at that like prime age.
Hmm.
Um, and especially with the Gen 1 remakes where if you got that brand new not used, it came with that little attachment that you could put onto your GBA where you could wirelessly do battles and trades and stuff, which was really nice.
I remember that classic feeling. Um, yeah,
That's a
Gen
very
3 was
novel thing at the time.
hmm. Yeah, Gen 3 was such a unique time. Like it's actually funny because Gen 3 was specifically Ruby Sapphire and Emerald and then like Fire Red Leaf Green. I always inherently like for the longest time the Gen 2 starters were like the biggest like mystique for me as like a Pokemon fan because I had missed those games entirely. So they were
See,
kind
I
of like
I feel like you were kind of lucky in that respect because of me starting with the original Game Boy and then going to Game Boy. Well, like obviously I had a Game Boy Color the whole time, but I started with the OG Game Boy games, and then I went over to the Game Boy Color games, the Gold and Silver, Crystal, and it was like, oh, I can send Pokemon from my Gen 1 games over to my Gen 2 games, and that was fantastic. Like that was a great thing. And then when Gen 3 came out, I was like, oh great, I got all these Pokemon I can fucking send forward. Nope, no
nope.
fucking communication between the two. You cannot send anything from Gen 1 or Gen 2 to Gen 3. And I was so fucking frustrated by that.
The only way you could get your Gen 2 Pokemon in Gen 3 was you had to play Pokemon Coliseum and oh my god, that is you guys want a miserable experience, play Pokemon Coliseum. That's all I'll say.
I still have that game.
I do too. It's $100 game now.
It was one of the few GameCube games I had, and it's been passed on to Xander now. I don't think he's played very much of it, if at all. But
I mean, let's be real, it's not a very good game.
no, it's not. It's probably one of the shittiest Pokemon games I've ever played. The
It
concept of it was great,
it was
but
a cool
not
idea. Just
having not having wild Pokemon kind of really killed it.
also making everything just arbitrarily a double battle is not fun.
Well, see, I could have dealt with that. It was the fact that you can't grind, and you have to be able to grind in Pokemon games.
Mm. Then like you couldn't like you had to like you couldn't reliably get Pokemon because of the shadow Pokemon mechanic in that game, which
And yeah, the few instances where you would have to grind against trainers, which you couldn't rebattle, by the way,
mm,
you couldn't even level up the Pokemon until you purified them, and you had to beat like X amount of Pokemon before you could purify them, and then they'd start gaining levels. So like you had to use up all your limited resources just to get to the point where they can level up. It was a whole fucking convoluted mess, and I despised it.
I hated the fact too that it was like that was like the first real Pokemon style game on a console that like was an actual game, not just a battle simulation like call it like a Stadium was.
Yeah,
And
I had more fun with Stadium, honestly.
Stadium
And at
would
least
fu-
with Stadium, you could play the OG games on the TV if you had the adapter.
Hmm. Then Stadium at least like functioned and like made sense. Like
Yeah,
Coliseum, it was just such a convoluted mess. And then they didn't fix anything in XD either.
I didn't even play that one.
It's the same shit, just slightly. They fixed some things, but for the most part, it's still a boring slog.
That's about right.
And then they didn't even bother with Battle Revolution on the Wii because that was like somehow like an even less interesting stadium.
Jeez. Oh man. So yeah, I definitely say that the Gen 3 games and the Gen 1 remakes were I think like peak Pokemon during our childhood, and
The
especially because
best.
there was so many there was so many quality of life
Mm,
improvements in those, like not having to switch your box and save to access different, like being able to just shift through your boxes with your storage of Pokemon and
oh yeah,
do whatever you needed to do in there. Like that was so much easier, especially because like as I mentioned before with the whole nicknaming thing, that didn't just apply to trades. That applied to looking at things in the box. So like if you nicknamed your Pokemon something, you had no fucking clue what it was until you took it out.
mm,
So that was annoying.
yeah. To me, like the big appeal to Gen 3 in a lot of ways too is just the overall performance. Like it's got arguably the best like battle mechanics in any game before and after. Like it's so fast paced and like super like easy. Like the battles move quickly,
Yeah.
everything makes sense. The menus are like super snappy. Like it's just like one of those games that's super fun to play. And I love the music in the Gen 3 and Fire Red Leaf Green, Ruby Sapphire and Emerald.
Personally, though, like I feel like the Gen 4 games where that was like when Pokemon really started to make a lot of the best changes. Um,
They I'd say with Platinum on, just because Diamond and Pearl, trying to go back to those games, they are so slow.
I couldn't
And
tell you the last time I actually played one of the, like I had Pearl at first, and then eventually I got Platinum, and then I lost Pearl somewhere along the way, but I still have my Platinum, and that's the one I generally go back to.
so like the Gen 4 initial engine was kind of rough. Like it's very slow. It doesn't it kind of stutters a bit. It's not as snappy as like Gen 3 was. They fixed it up a little bit for Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and then Platinum is probably the most refined version of that style.
Gotcha.
I re- excuse me. I remember Diamond and Pearl, like the hype for Diamond and Pearl being pretty high.
I was excited for it.
I just remember because the DS was such a big thing at the time. I remember like the seeing the screenshots and like seeing like the little faux 3D like throughout the game, like with like the Pokemon centers and everything being like kind of 3D.
Yeah.
I remember that being kind of cool.
Yeah, added some depth to it. And then the when the Gen 2 remakes came out, like that was a that I mean Heart Gold is still my favorite Pokemon game of all time. Like
Heart Gold
and
made the
I know it has its problems, and it like it has some like aging problems. I know a lot of people tend to not like the way like the old school XP share works and stuff like that, but like I don't know, it's just Heart Gold Soul Silver to me is just like peak Pokemon.
we've really been spoiled by like the current like from Gen 6 on XP share where it's basically just like it plays the game for you at this point.
Pretty much. Especially like getting XP from catching Pokemon. That was a huge change.
Mm. I still remember too also like the the kind of like disemphasis put on HMs because like HMs for the
Yep.
longest time were they were run killers in a lot of ways because if you didn't want to have an HM like an HM bitch as I like to call them back in the day, where you'd catch that one shitty Pokemon and just give it all the HMs so that you wouldn't have to put it on your main team.
What was your go-to HM slave?
Um, whatever I could find, and then I just once I was done with it, I just throw it away.
Fair. Gen
Like
3 Lanoon was a good HM slave. Could learn most of them.
see, it's funny because certain HMs I would keep on Pokemon, like all the water ones are pretty useful. Like Surf is incredibly useful.
Yeah, Surf is a solid water type move. Waterfall is basically the same thing but physical. At least from Gen 4 onward.
Uh,
That was the big thing with Gen 4 is the special physical split. Because back in the day, from Gen 1 through 3, whether a move was physical or special depended entirely on the type.
mm,
Whereas from Gen 4 onward, it would depend on the move itself. Like for instance, um, say like the elemental punch moves. There was a reason why Hitmonchan sucked in the first 3 gens, and that was because all the element punches were special based, whereas in from Gen 4 onward, because they're punch moves, they are physical, even though they have the element to them.
mm. Yeah, I always remember that. Another one that was super useful to me was like Fly. Fly was always pretty good.
Yep.
Fly was good, and then Strength was surprisingly useful.
Yeah, especially if you gave it to like a Snorlax.
Mm.
You know, it's like a good physical attacker that's also a normal type. Like Strength is solid.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think of the other, like Rock Smash was pretty meh. Like sometimes it was okay, other times not really.
Defog was bullshit.
Defog is the dumbest HM ever, and I'm glad they did away with that after one game.
Yep.
Dive was kind of fun because it was basically Dive was just another version of Dig, only in water.
Yeah, basically.
Rock Climb was fine.
Cut wasn't great, but depending on like for instance, there's I forget what the ability is called, but there is an ability that a Pokemon like Scyther can have where if a move does like 60 damage or less, it gets like a 50% boost to power.
Mm.
So like Cut was actually decent with Pokemon like that.
Cut to me was always a great like early game. You need a quick move just to like kind of bash out there. Like it's really good for like say like when you get one of those bullshit like the enemy has like that little tiny piece of XP of health left, and you just need a quick attack to get out. So
or if it's good for a catch move too.
Yeah, that's true. If you need to just kind of like not do too much damage. I know occasionally like you get later in later game, you'd get like the goddamn infinite cycle of like you almost kill it and then full restore. Almost kill it, full restore. It's like, god damn it.
Fucking Cynthia.
Actually, let's do a little diversion. Who do you think was the best champion?
It in terms of like who was like the most difficult to be, like who was the strongest or who was just the best, like as a person.
Let's do let's split this the question in half. Like which one gave you the most shit, but then which one's also your favorite?
I don't know, because I mean, when I was a kid, it was always hard to beat Blue. Lance was stupid. Like
Yeah, Lance
he went
was
from
the worst
Elite Four to
champion.
champion. Like he was like the default champion. He was the champion because the champion dipped. Like
But yeah, the real final battle in that game is Red.
yeah. So I mean, I don't even count him as a champion, even though he technically is one.
I like Steven Stone as a champion.
It's a fucking dope name.
He also
Yeah.
he uses metal types, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Or steel types.
Steven's cool. Although it's weird because isn't the water guy the champion in Emerald?
He is, and it makes that if you chose fucking Sceptile, the champion's fucking easy as fuck.
Well, even if you don't like, because you'll always have something, especially in Gen 3, you have something for water types because
The game's
main
like 80%
complaint
water.
the main complaint people have about Gen 3 is there's too much water. So
It's not that bad. People are just revisionist history bullshit, like always.
yeah, well, that's the thing is I don't know why people made such a big deal about that because there was always a lot of water in every Pokemon game. Doesn't matter.
Because the big complaint I always get is they're always like, "Oh, because you go 5 feet and then random battle," and I'm like, just get some damn repels. Then you're using them in the grass already. Like, what's the
That's like
difference?
complaining. That's like complaining there's too many bugs in the starter area. Like, of course there's bugs in the starter area. Those are starter Pokemon. Duh.
Now, I
And
always
like
found
no matter what game you're playing, there's gonna be water portions of the game. And if they're all supposed to be based off of different parts of the real world, obviously some of them are gonna be more water based.
there's always portions of Pokemon. Like, I mean, I'm guilty of this too because I hate Sun and Moon, but that just irrationally hate certain entries. Like, I know a lot of the people that started with like Red and Blue don't like Gen 3 for some reason. I know a lot of like people who were really big into Gold and Silver can't stand Diamond and Pearl.
Diamond and Pearl got a lot, like Gen 4 in general got a lot of hate back in the day, and I loved Gen 4, and like that
I
was I
I
got really
get
into it.
I get some of the hate. Like, I understand like the performance is kind of off on those first couple games. Well, like on Diamond and Pearl themselves. The region is a little weird to travel at first. It's definitely the most Metroidvania-ish, I'd say, out of all the regions is the
Mhm.
Sinnoh region.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um, I also thought I like him now, but I thought Barry was kind of a lame rival at first.
Yeah, I don't. I never particularly disliked him. He was like super spazzy
I named him Crackhead
in
on
the
my
game.
first playthrough.
Well, see the hair. I named him Goku in my first playthrough.
See, like I was an immature fuck, so like I would always name them like the dumbest things. Like Barry was always like Crackhead or like meth head or something because that's just
He's
edgy
wicked.
teen.
He's very likable in the manga. I can say that much.
He is from the little bit I've read so far. I used to always name Blue. I'd always name Blue Jerk Off whenever he'd appear.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fair. Smell you later.
I think I used to name
Uh,
like Silver Asshole just because he was.
yeah, I don't know. I like Silver more now that I know like his deal as a character, but that's the thing with Pokemon games is like there's really not a whole lot of like development with characters.
No, not until Black and White. Black and White was really the first one that, well, Gold and Silver, Heart Gold and Soul Silver had it to a degree because there is, at the time, Gen 2 was definitely the most story heavy. Like, because Ruby and Sapphire does have story, but you have to really care about it to truly get anything out of it. And then
Yeah,
Diamond
I
and
think.
Pearl,
All right.
I was going to say, and then Diamond and Pearl similar. It has a story, but you really have to care to get anything out of it.
Well, I feel like Gen 4 was the first like real attempt to have like a lore building story. Like it really like went into like the creation of the universe and
Oh, yeah. Straight up, you
like
can catch God.
yeah. The Gen 4 I feel like was their first real attempt to be like, okay, we're gonna try to make like an actual JRPG ass story.
And then they
And
and then they
it
went to
worked out
black
right.
and then they went black and white and legit made a JRPG story.
Yeah. That's why I feel like I mean, since like Gen 6 is like my cutoff point. I mean technically like the Gen 3 remake and I did play the Gen 4 remake and I enjoyed it for what it was. It didn't add a ton. There was some like quality of life improvements and stuff that I appreciated, but I mean, I definitely wanted more out of the Gen 4 remake. I wanted it to be more like the Gen 3 remake
Yeah.
or even the
As
Gen 2 remake. Like the Gen 2
well,
remake added a bunch of great stuff.
Heart Gold Soul Silver, that is like a perfect remake that actually like faithful adaptation, I should say. Um because arguably Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are like reimaginings more than just a straight up remake.
True.
Um let's see. So we've covered we've kind of jumped around a little bit. Because we were talking about HMs there for a bit, and then we talked about so we were talking about the champions.
Oh, right. I don't know. I mean, I definitely, in a lot of ways, I like Cynthia. I like Cynthia as a champion
She gave
because,
me the most shit, I think, out of
oh, for
all of them.
sure, she's definitely one of the most difficult ones. But I also just like her as a character too because she's like pretty significantly involved in the story of that game.
Mm,
You beat her grandmother before you even fight her, which is kind of
yeah.
weird. But I mean, I guess it's not that weird because technically the first person you meet in the first game is the champion's grandfather. So
Yeah, it's so weird that Blue's technically a champion when like it's like I like the idea of the rival being the champion, but I did enjoy that they didn't make that the go-to thing with every game.
honestly, I thought it was a little disappointing that they didn't ever really do that again, to my knowledge.
I don't think anyone would have ever topped Blue, to be honest.
Eh, it's debatable.
I don't think I just don't think I would have ever taken Barry serious as a champion.
Well, not Barry at least. Maybe Dawn.
Don doesn't do anything in the game though.
Yeah, I was really disappointed by that in Gen 4 that she wasn't really like, or if you were the girl, whatever the guy character's name is, like
Lucas.
yeah, they just don't really do any. Like they were supposed to be like the de facto second rival, but they didn't really do much. And it's just
They
kind of
legit
lame.
they don't. Like it's not like Ruby and Sapphire where ironically like Brandon and May are arguably more of the main rival than Wally who tries.
Yeah, but again, in that one, like neither of them make it that far. Like I think you fight Wally right before you enter the Elite Four, but like
I mean,
it's
I'll
just
give
kind of
Wally
whatever.
credit. He's got a pretty cool team when you face him there.
True.
But by
Um,
then you're fucking overpowered as fuck and you wipe him out in one shot. But
and I don't even remember what the champion of Gen 6 was about. I don't even remember his name or her name. I don't
um
even remember who I remember nothing.
holy fuck, you're right. I don't remember the
So
champion
wasn't
of
very
Gen 6.
impactful. I can say that very much. I can say that much. It wasn't
See,
impactful in the slightest.
in
It's about
Gen
as
5,
impactful as Team Flare was.
but fashion. Ugh.
But
Also, random giant man walking around, and then he got his Pokemon back at the end.
yeah,
Gen
I
6,
mean, I like the story for Gen 6, like with the whole like the immortal guy and his Pokemon and everything. Like, that was kind of fun. But
Gen. Let's talk about Gen 6 for a minute. Gen 6 is literally like X and Y. That is literally the perfect example of like throw every idea we have at the wall and see what sticks.
and the irony is the things that stuck they didn't stick with.
No, not at all. Um, Gen 6 also has some of the weirdest fucking pacing in a Pokemon game I've ever seen.
Yeah, because wasn't it like a thing where like you could kind of choose which path you wanted to take? Like there was like once you got to a certain point, it was like you could take the right path or the left path, and that would take you on a different course.
Yes, but it was still weird how they did it because like you face off against the first gym pretty quickly into the game, and then there's a
Mhm.
huge gap between the first gym and the second gym. But then right after
Yeah,
you finish the second gym, it's like you get like three gyms in a row. Like right after that, it's like a weird way they did that.
yeah. Um, and they just hand you a but I think that was the start of like the handholdy thing. Like it wasn't too bad in X and Y,
Well, X and
but they
Y
didn't start
does
that.
X and Y did a cool thing where like rather than the one rival, they gave you like five rivals.
Yeah,
Only like two of them really matter, but it was a cool idea because you have like the strong rival, the somewhat weak rival, the rival that doesn't do shit. Uh, because I always remember too, like the first dungeon in X and Y, you literally one of your rivals follows you the entire way through, and they literally act as a portable Pokemon Center, and you can just reheal at whatever you want.
yeah. Gen 4, I think, started that trend. Like there were just certain points throughout Gen 4 where somebody would just be like, "Hey, let me tag along through this dungeon, and I'll heal your Pokemon after every battle."
Yeah.
But
Um.
I did like that I just got gifted a Lucario in X and Y though. That was fun.
Yeah. That and also like you pick your starter, and then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, here's a Gen 1 starter just for free.
Yeah, that was also rather nice.
I was like, Jesus
But at the
Christ.
same time, it's like, do I really want 2 starters and a Lucario? Like, that's kind of cheating. And
It's
I think
only
that was
cheat.
like, huh?
It's not cheating if the game flat out gives like forces you to take them.
I know, but like that was like I mean, X and Y had enough to keep me occupied. That was like probably the one Pokemon game that I spent the most time in a single file on. But
Same, which is weird because I remember barely anything from it.
well, that's the thing is I like whipped through like the story and all that, and then like all the rest of it was just spent uh building teams. And because this was the point when like I had my like little group and we were all playing X and Y, and we were all playing around with different megas, and we were doing the battle frontier stuff, and
You know where I
we,
spent
we
the
were working
majority?
on we were trying this is when Wonder Trading came out, so that was a huge thing that we spent a lot of time
I
on.
spent the majority of my time in X and Y in this one cave right before the Elite Four. There was like this one little spot that you could run around in circles and just constantly get strong Pokemon. I would
Yeah,
spend literally just hours in there catching like random gravelers and then just wonder trading them just to see
yeah,
what I could get. And I was the immature asshole that would like give them the dumbest fucking names,
it's about right.
just send them to people. Like
And
I
you
think a lot of
and you still couldn't rename nicknamed Pokemon that came from
yeah.
other people at that
Oh
time.
yeah,
So
I got some offensive fucking shit. That I won't say what, but some of the Pokemon I got back, I was like, "Oh, Nintendo censors didn't try on this one."
nope, nope.
Or whenever
Um,
you'd get someone would trade you a Pokemon with an Everstone, and you'd be like, "You asshole."
mhm. I did like that. In X and Y, they added the Battle Chateau, which was pretty much just a building where it just had a bunch of trainers that you could just fight over and over and over again. And that was a great way to build up teams, especially with like the whole team XP share.
Mm.
Like that was the only reason I was able to build up so many different Pokemon is because of that.
Oh, speaking of interesting locations, we forgot to talk about Gen 4, the Pokemon migration feature.
Oh yes, with which is one of the was something that we'll never really get again because it was a very unique thing for the DS where it had the Game Boy Advance slot.
Yeah, imagine getting a DS Lite and being like, "Oh yeah, this feature that was really cool, you can't even do it anymore."
You could do that with the DS Lite.
No,
You mean
sorry,
the
not DS,
DSi?
DSi. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was stupid when that came out. I was like, oh, it's a DS with a camera. Who gives a fuck? Nobody wants whatever. Who cares?
Um,
I did
yeah,
not care at all.
the migrating feature was really cool, but at the same time, I really didn't like the fact that you could only do like five or it was like six every like day. So you'd get your six and then you'd have to wait another day to get the rest.
Yeah, that was a little annoying for sure. I forget what did how did the remake handle that?
I
Because I know they did something with that area. Obviously, it couldn't be the same thing, but I'm trying to remember what they did.
I don't remember honestly.
I'll have to jump back into it at some point and just look because I don't can't for the life of me remember what that was. Also, Gen 4 was the first one that like I remember them adding like a decent chunk of post game content. Like there's a
Gen
whole big island that you could explore after beating the Elite Four.
Oh yeah, the battle zone.
Yeah, where like the first area you go to is like the Battle Frontier area, but then there's like a whole bunch of like grasslands and mountains. There's like a cave where you can find Heat Ran. There's a bunch of other stuff too. It was really cool.
That's also where like the infamous like there's that Wally fight where Wally at the time had statistically the strongest Pokemon in the series.
Mhm.
And then for Heart Gold and Soul Silver, because all the Gen 2 purists bitched so hard, they actually they had to re-upped Red's team to make his Pikachu the strongest Pokemon in the series again.
See, that's like that I couldn't have cared less about that.
Oh, you'd be
Um,
amazed how like I swear Gen 2 fans like they just have a hate boner for freaking Diamond and Pearl for some reason.
which is weird because that's the engine that made Heart Gold and Soul Silver so good.
I know,
I mean,
right?
there's obviously features in Heart Gold and Soul Silver that that Diamond and Pearl didn't have. That like the Pokemon following you thing. That was really fun.
Why don't they
Um,
do that more? I love that so much, and
they
they've
brought
only
it
done it,
back for Let's Go.
but that requires you to play Let's Go.
Yeah, but you can ride an Arcanine.
You also can't catch Pokemon fun at all.
No, you stupid Joy Cons. Um, but no, like the Gen 2 remakes, like they added like the little Safari Zone off like in the far corner of the map, which was really cool. Um, I know there was some other stuff that they added that just
They
slipped my
also
mind
like
right
added
now.
in a bunch of dungeons that were cut out of like the original Gold and Silver because they couldn't fit them.
Yeah, and they made re-challenging trainers easier in that too, or like more consistent.
Well, they also gave like a lot of the gym leaders like in like Kento, because like Kento was like shoved in there very haphazardly. Like it was very impressive that they did it, but at the same time, it still was, you could tell they had to cut corners. A lot of the gym leaders in Gen in Kento and in like the original game were like they had like the most like I think Lieutenant Surge, you literally just walk in, like his gym doesn't have any obstacles at all.
Yeah, that was one thing about the Gen 1 being thrown in there that was a little annoying. How they just kind of did away with. But at that point, it's like, you just kind of want to go around and get all the badges. You don't want to deal with puzzles. Like what? I already did all the puzzles for the Gen 2 stuff. I don't want to do them again for Gen 1 that I already did in the previous game. That's annoying.
Well, I always remember
So I
because
kind
like
of get it.
in the original game, Blaine was just in a random cave, but at least in like in the Heart Gold Soul Silver, they actually gave him a quote unquote gym.
Well, at least it made sense. Like there was a story reason why he was in the cave. It was because
True,
the volcano on Cinnabar erupted and destroyed everything,
true.
which I thought was kind of a cool, especially with like the way the time. Should we talk about the timeline a little bit? Because the timeline is weird in the games.
Yeah, because it's essentially Gen 1 starts off the series, and then Gen 2 is like directly at like a couple of years after. Gen 3 takes place at some point during the same time as Gen 1, and then Gen 4 takes place sometime during the same time as Gen 2.
Yeah, it's weird.
And then every
Although,
gen after that just kind of takes place one after the other.
and I did get kind of like, I don't know if this is like an actual theory or if it's been confirmed at all, but since Gen 1 and Gen 3 happened at the same time, I'm wondering if the volcano on Cinnabar erupted because of Groudon.
See, that's a thing that would make a lot of sense, but the Pokemon Company will never give you an answer.
Fair. I mean, even just the way that they set up the timeline, it's just, I don't know, it's kind of dumb. I like the way the
I
Pokemon Adventures manga does it, where it's just consecutive.
also in Pokemon Adventures though, I still can't get over the fucking Ruby and Sapphire Deus Ex Machina at the end of that fucking arc.
Yeah, that was like the one thing that kind of spoiled that arc because that arc was so good.
I know. It's just like Celebi, undo everything.
Yeah, but whatever.
See, I always love the fact too, like when because I love that they actually do try to make them canonically connect together. Because like
Yeah,
obviously, like the feeling I can imagine, like I didn't get to experience it obviously as a kid because I didn't play Ruby, Gold, Silver, and Crystal, but I can imagine like the feeling playing that game. Like you finish Johto, and then you find out Kento's literally right there, and you can re-explore Kento, and then you get to the top of Mount Silver, and then it's literally you from the previous game.
yeah. It was. Speaking from experience, it was a wild experience. And because you kind of get like the hint of like that's gonna happen once you get to the Viridian gym and you fight Blue. Oh wait, Blue's the gym leader here now. I mean, it makes sense because you're like, oh
Hmm.
well, Giovanni left and like disbanded Team Rocket and left and was doing his thing. So it makes sense that they would need somebody to fill the gap, and then all of a sudden it's just, oh, Blue's here. Like that's awesome.
Hmm.
And then you're like, all right, well if Blue's here and you can fight Blue as your Gen 2 protagonist, like that means that Red is here somewhere. Then you get to the very end, and it's like, holy shit, dude, I'm not gonna be able to beat him.
Yeah, it's weird because like Gen 3 itself is essentially like the most standalone game I'd say in the series. Like
Yeah, probably.
Gen 3 really doesn't have anything that ties it to the other games aside from just the general. I think it's I think if your family moves from Johto, that's like the one real reference to the rest of the series.
Yeah.
Because Gen 4, the main cameo is Jasmine appears towards the end of the game in one of the cities. She's just chilling there.
Mhm. And also, Professor Oak shows up.
Oh yeah, I always forget about that.
Yeah, because I believe he's the one who gives you the
It,
underground
and the National
toolkit
Dex.
and the National Dex. Yeah.
I always remember Jasmine because she was in the finals, the city where the final gym was. But that if you went and did a contest in that town, she would also occasionally join in, and she would use her Steelix for everything, which was kind of funny.
Yeah. Um.
Um,
So, oh god.
I was gonna say too the cameo connection cameo in Black and White though is quite possibly my favorite because they actually reference English Grunt from the first game.
Oh, the
You remember the one Team Rocket Grunt that speaks that really broken English?
yeah, he shows up like towards the or was that Gold and Silver?
It's either Gold and Silver or the original Red and Blue, but
I feel
there's
like it was
like
Gold and Silver because there was like a whole thing where uh 'cause I'm fairly certain you see him in Cerulean.
it is Cerulean. I just can't remember if it was Gold and Silver or the original.
I'm pretty sure it was Gold and Silver.
But regardless, like the whole gimmick with him is like he comes out and he speaks this really broken English, which you have to remember the the first four gens like Hoenn, Johto, Sinnoh, and um, Kanto are implied to be like islands of Japan.
Yeah.
Um, so it would be implied that he's speaking really bad Japanese. And then when we get to the Unova region, which is supposed to be like the America, United States, you meet him again there, and he explains how he was a Team Rocket guy, and it's like, oh, that's why his Japanese was so bad because he's American.
Yep.
So nice. It was
Um,
just a nice little like touch.
yeah, I like when they do stuff like that. It's nice.
I mean,
Um,
obviously, like Black and White 2, there's the whole like movie like set where like they have all the cameos from other characters from the series. Red and Blue appear in Heart Gold, Soul Silver. I'm not. They appear in Sun and Moon.
mhm. Yeah, I didn't get that far. I do know that it happens.
I
I think
saw
I
the
got like
image.
maybe 5 or 6 trials in, and I was like, yeah, I'm done. That's the first I ever got.
I didn't even get to the first trial. Anyways, so going back now, we were talking about we're kind of just jumping around here, but out of all so one of the big things with Pokemon is you'll be going across like the region, and you'll run into different trainers. What was one of your favorite like just like random trainer quips to start a battle?
Why aren't you wearing shorts? They're comfy and easy to wear.
That's a classic one. Um, I always love like the ones where it's like, "Ooh, I'm a bug catcher. Let's fight."
Yeah, it was uh obviously youngster Joey, classic.
I always love adding youngster Joey on the phone in Gen 2 just because like he'll call you all the time and he's like, I don't care about your Rattata, Joey.
Just for the memes. Just for the memes.
Top percentage of
And I love how they made that joke in Yu-Gi-Oh! Bridged. Like they did like the one clip show episode. And like you just see like a pic like a scene of Joey Wheeler like calling up Kabe. He's like, hey Koiba, I tell you about my super cool Rattata. It's great.
that one's always a classic. Um
Um
speaking of so we were talking about starters earlier on and how occasionally if you pick the wrong starter, you're gonna have a miserable time depending on how the game's laid out.
hmm,
Did you ever pick Chikorita in Gen 2?
in a Nuzlocke, no less.
You're really fucked if you pick Chikorita in that game because it starts off with the bird gym And then you get the bug gym, and it's like, holy shit, you went hard mode, all right.
And then to top it off, you get the mill tank right after
Yeah,
that.
and then you get fucking Whitney in her milk tank. Fuck,
Yep.
I still fucking hate Whitney so much for that shit.
Whitney made Xander rage quit silver.
She's so bullshit. And then not only that, once you finally beat her after all that fucking agony, she then throws a bitch fit and won't give you the damn badge. I'm always like,
Yeah, you gotta walk out and walk back in to get the badge. It's like that's why nobody likes Whitney.
It's funny how Gen 2 has like two of the moments where like the gym leaders are just asshats. Like you get Whitney and then you get Claire later on who just won't give you the badge and makes you do a fucking trial and still won't give it to you.
And like there's also is it Jasmine, the steel type one? Where
Yes.
like you kind of understand her bit where she's like taking care of the sick Pokemon, but it's like, come on, I just want to fucking fight the gym. Like, come on, let's go.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Jasmine hanging out with her Ampharos.
Hmm.
It's a lighthouse.
And I feel like Gen 2, like most of the games would just like kind of give you the HMs you need as you go along, or it would be like story beats. But in Gen 2, like there was a lot of ones you could miss. Like I
Oh yeah.
remember going through Gen 2 for the first time in like years and being like, why the fuck can I not find Fly? I have no idea where Fly is. It's just some random dude standing around on an island town. I think it's where the fighting gym is. He's
Mhm.
just like not even in a house. He's just like hanging out on the island and you just have to talk to him like after you beat the gym, and he gives you Fly. And it's been for I had to like, Google it because I had no fucking clue where to find it, and I was getting so annoyed having to run from place to place.
Oh yeah. So what do you get bigger PTSD from? Zubats or Tentacruels?
Probably Zubats, because in Gen 1, I like love Tentacruel in Gen 1 because I actually one of my favorite Pokemon memories was during that time period when me and my group of friends was playing the old school Pokemon games. We had N64 with the adapters set up, and my buddy Tom wanted to battle me. So I was just the biggest asshole because he was like talking all this shit, like putting up this big game. I send out my Tentacruel and just toxic wrap his entire team. It loses a single Pokemon. That was such an asshole. That's one of my favorite fucking Pokemon memories.
Hmm. So
But yeah.
every game gives you one Master Ball. Um, the Master Ball, for those who, I mean, most people probably know, but the Master Ball is obviously a Pokeball that guarantees a catch no matter what.
Mhm.
Most people save them for one of the legendaries. What's the dumbest thing you ever used a Master Ball on?
A trainer Pokemon. I just did it just to see if it would work.
I'm guessing it
It
didn't.
didn't. It didn't.
I caught a Magikarp with one
That's a good one.
just to do it. So I was just like, it was like Magikarp.
I mean, I've
Done.
definitely done that kind of thing just for the lols, just because. I mean, I'm at a point now where, like, if I'm gonna play Pokemon, I'm gonna go out of my way to try and give myself some challenge. That's why, generally, if I play an older Pokemon game, I'm Nuzlocking because that it's more fun to me to sweat while I'm playing Pokemon.
I did a let's play of one of the Pokemon games. It's no longer up. I deleted it because it was really bad. It's worse than the one that is on my YouTube channel right now. And I
Really?
remember in the let's play, I remember I got the Master Ball and I immediately threw it away. I was like, just to piss people
Just threw it
off.
in the trash.
Yeah, I was like, don't need it, useless.
I
No,
got
no,
you.
actually, I think I caught like something stupid and then I released the Pokemon immediately after, just to be a dick.
Classic.
I think I also released the starter in that let's play just to be a dick.
So here's the real question, though: is if you're playing Gen 2 and you get the Master Ball, what are you using it on?
Roman legendary.
But which one? Because there's three.
Uh, I forget. Do they have different stipulations?
Nope, they're all the same.
Yeah, I
Unless
wish
you're
I.
playing Crystal.
Well,
Because
I know Crystal's
in Crystal,
Suicune.
you just get Suicune in like an actual battle. Because that for some reason in that one, that's like the main legendary instead of Ho-Oh or Lugia, which
Yeah. Um, Usually the first one I happen to run across, I'll use the Master Ball just to get one out of the way. Because
Usually I go for either Entei or Raikou.
yeah, because I will say it once. Fuck roaming legendaries.
Yeah, and it's something that's one of the things that they decided to use again.
They
Which
use
fuck
that.
that shit.
They use that a lot. Fucking Gen 4 had like 7 of them.
Yeah, wasn't fun.
That's why I just got an action replay and used unlimited Master Balls, because fuck that shit.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, this is something that a lot of modern players will never understand, but like back in the day, the trials of mystery gift Pokemon.
uh I never really messed with Mystery Gift. I didn't understand the concept, and by the time I did, the games would be done.
Yeah.
So I missed out on every single one of those, and all the like special events, like all the like extra like side mission DLC stuff from like the DS games. Missed all those.
So thankfully with the DS games, you can just action replay that stuff in, and it just so much better than back in the day, like having to go to the goddamn like Toys R Us to like so they could scan your cart and just give you this thing. I get why they did it. They were trying to promote like interaction and meeting people, the whole thing the series is about. But let's face it, kids hate each other and don't want to do that. So
Yeah, and it's just like a huge like pain in the ass to just be like, oh, well, you just can't have this Pokemon unless you happen to know a mystery gift event is happening and go to the store to get the thing. And
and they never came to our stores, I swear.
like, I never got Celebi in Gen 2. I always knew like where you were supposed to go to get it, but was never an option for me because I didn't know that that was a thing.
Yeah. And now like mystery gift is just a thing that you can just do over Wi-Fi, and it's still such like a thing that I'm so unused to that I never end up doing it.
And they don't last as long as like even like going back to like X and Y and Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, like the mystery gifts for those would last a while. Like it would go for like a good couple of years, and there'd consistently always be something. Um, I went after like maybe 6 months of having the Gen 4 remake, and there was nothing on the horizon. They were all done with that, and it's just like, well, all right, fuck me, I guess.
So were you pro using legendaries, or did you just catch them and put them in the bank?
When I was a kid, I used them. Now they're just not as useful to me because even as a kid, like, because you catch the legendary and like at first it was good, but they take so fucking long to level up, and because you get them at a higher level already, they're not as good as a Pokemon that you just caught at like level 10 and raised.
Hmm.
So at that point, it was like, why even bother?
Yeah, they were kind of like they were cool to have, but then once you got them, you were like, "Fuck this!" They're not fun.
Unless I'm playing one of the Gen 1 games and I do the glitch to get Mew because you get the Mew at level 7 and you raise that from level 7, and that's the best Pokemon you're ever going to get in that game.
Because Mew can learn every move in the game, right?
Yep. And it just has like really good stats anyway. So having a Mew and having transform with like those like amazing base stats in that game, like you just automatically have every Pokemon and it's automatically going to be better than whatever I'm copying. So that was always fun.
Speaking of, so you mentioned the Mew glitch. Speaking of glitches, we have to talk about missing now.
Yeah, I never did that as a kid. That was something that I discovered later in life.
I think most people like didn't initially do it when it was a thing. They kind of discovered it. Well, they discovered it earlier on, but they didn't actually mess around with it till like they were much older.
Hmm.
Because missing no is like one of the funniest things ever. I swear.
Because wasn't it like a thing where like Missing No was originally supposed to be like what became Missing No supposedly was originally supposed to be a first form Kangaskhan.
Supposedly, that's kind of why it evolves into one. Because I think it was supposed to be like the little baby in the pouch.
Mhm.
Because missing no is just like a short for missing number,
Yeah.
which is essentially it's what happens when the game. This is like a really bad explanation, but it's essentially what happens, I guess, when the game tries to load a Pokemon that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird, like volatile glitch that it just causes the game to do really weird shit.
Mhm. Like
Like,
spawn random Pokemon with stats that are completely outrageous.
oh yeah, catching like level like 427 war turtles and stuff.
Yeah, my buddy Matt, when we were going through those games, he kept getting Porygons, and that
Just everywhere.
it was just outrageous. And it would be like outrageously powerful, but as soon as it levels up, it would be like what it would supposed to what the stats would supposed to be at that level. So as long as you didn't level it up, it was just a fucking powerhouse that could not be beat.
You just catch a bunch of them, and then once one leveled up, you just get rid of it and get another.
Yeah.
I always remember there's that, or like it would multiply whatever's in your seventh item slot, so you just get like 99 or whatever.
Yeah, that's how you get extra TMs in those games.
Extra TMs, unlimited master balls.
Yep. Well, that was one big I think Gen 6 change that was a huge game changer was unbreakable TMs, just forever TMs.
Unbreakable TMs and letting you delete HMs.
Yeah. It was a big game changer for sure.
Also, Gen 6 also introduced customizable player characters for the first time.
Yeah, I didn't really mess around with that a whole lot. There wasn't a whole lot that I liked. I don't know why they had like a weird like idea of what your character should look like in
Well,
Pokemon.
unfortunately, like this is just kind of a nature of the beast, but unfortunately, the female players got so many more options than the male players got.
The figures. Um Also one thing I liked about Gen 6 was the roller skates.
I like the roller skates initially, but once you play like say like Sword or Shield or Let's Go or like any of the ones after, you kind of realize how arbitrary they kind of were.
Mhm.
Because
Um
Gen 6 is weird because when you don't have the roller skates, like the controls are still stuck on like the 8-way movement.
yeah.
But then like when you have the roller skates, you actually move in full 360-degree motion.
Mhm. So I know we've kind of jumped around a lot talking about like the different like mainline Pokemon games. We want to talk about some of the spin-offs.
Sure. I guess we can start with like the first spin-off in a lot of ways, the Pokemon the trading card game.
That I didn't I think I actually played that for the first time when we were working at Richards. And I only started playing it because my stepson had a bunch of cards and he wanted to play the game and I was like, I don't know how to fucking play that game.
Hmm.
So I ended up playing I ended up downloading a ROM on my phone at the time and I played through it just to learn how to play the game and then through that was able to teach him how to play.
Hmm. Yeah, like I remember that I was one of the few people that could actually play the Pokemon trading card game because I played that back in the day.
Hmm. I mean,
Um,
nowadays I don't know about DX, GX, EX. I don't know what the hell all that shit is, but
Goddamn coin flips.
yeah, yeah, that's a game that definitely heavily relies on coin flips.
Yeah. And they fucking are rigged against you.
Oh, always, always. Was any kind of like coin flip specific thing where you can't just call what you want it to be? Like no, in Pokemon it's like heads is a success, tails is a fail,
Hmm.
which I always call tails, so that sucks for me.
Yeah. That was like the first real Pokemon spin-off. It's a very bare bones game aside from that. Like there's not a whole lot of content outside of the game itself. Um, there was also Pokemon Pinball, which was pinball.
Hmm. I think I played
Um,
a little bit of that, but it wasn't anything special.
and then after that, we had the N64 games. Like we had Pokemon Puzzle League, which it's puzzle game.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I think I had the GBA version of that. Or was it Game Boy Color? I don't remember which.
Game Boy Color, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, I think I
There,
had that version.
then there was the most iconic of Pokemon spin-offs, Pokemon Snap.
Which took like what 20 years to get a second one.
Yeah, yeah. I just honestly, when I think Pokemon Snap, I always think of like going around the levels and just hucking rocks at the Pokemon because they're fucking savage.
Yeah, I didn't play that for the first time for not until like the past maybe like 4 years ago, something like that. It's fairly recent the first time I played it, and I played it a little bit, and it was fine. You know, it
Hmm.
wasn't anything crazy, but I enjoyed it for what it was. Is that an NSO right now? I feel like it
I,
is.
bel I believe so. The only other spin-off that comes to mind immediately is Hey You Pikachu, which was the one where you could talk to Pikachu with that microphone thing.
I wanted that so bad when I was a kid, but of course I didn't have an N64 as a kid, and yeah,
Pikachu straight up takes shits and throws them at you in that game.
so funny. I we got that for Xander for Christmas years ago, and he played that for a while. Um,
Pikachu's a little bastard in that game. Like he could be a
yeah,
downright dick.
he just wouldn't listen a lot of the time too.
Well, the microphone adapter is like a piece of shit. Like
Yeah, but yeah, he played that a lot too, and I messed around with it a little bit just
hmm,
to satisfy my childhood fantasies of the game that I could never have.
you realize Pikachu's an asshole and it makes you hate Pokemon.
Little bit, yeah. But the
we,
concept was cool, and I kind of wish they would bring that back with the technology we have now because it would be way more interactive and way more functional now if it was made now as opposed to back then.
hmm. um, yeah, honestly, there was supposed to be like a semi sequel in development for the GameCube called like Meowth Party, but it never got super far in development.
Oh, that would have been fun, especially since Meowth actually talks and you could be talking shit the whole time.
Yeah. Um. So I was gonna say we already kind of talked about like the GameCube ones and Stadium to a degree. Like they're not great games.
Well, I mean,
Um.
Stadium's fun. I mean, Stadium, everyone plays Stadium for the party games, the mini games.
Yeah. Then Stadium's just a decent battle simulator.
Yeah, it was
Um.
just a fun party game.
Now, if we're gonna talk spin-offs, we should talk about Mystery Dungeon because that's basically the spin-off.
Yeah. Um, which at the time that this is released, there will probably be a blog about it on superpodnetwork.com.
Yes. Um. Gotta make use of that
um,
now.
so I played the Red and Blue Rescue Team games when they came out. Um, and I had an immensely fun time with those.
Hmm.
Especially since uh, I don't know if it's happened since, or maybe my memory is just foggy, but in the red and blue rescue teams, there is a point in the story where there is a literal lynch mob after you, trying
Yep.
to murder you because they think that you are causing all these natural disasters just by existing.
I mean, I still think to this day my favorite. Like, I love the really hilariously offhand comedy in like in the series because like one of my favorites of all time is still like the guy outside of the grass gym in Gen 1 who's like, I love this gym, it's full of women.
Yeah,
Which they changed in modern versions to strong trainers. But I still
yeah,
remember that back in the day.
it's about right. But yeah, Mystery Dungeon was really cool. Like the whole concept of just it's basically an isekai story because you
Yeah,
just kind of wake up and you're a Pokemon in like a literal Pokemon world where they have their own communities and legends and myths and gods essentially.
I love the fact that like the way you determine what your Pokemon's going to be is a personality test, but I swear to God, everybody just fucking cheats and makes it so they get the Pokemon they want.
I mean, at first for sure. And they kind of changed it up with the remake and like the later additions to the series where they lead you off with the personality test, but then they're like, "Do you want this Pokemon?" And if you say no, they're just like, "Okay, well here's a list. Pick one."
Yeah.
Like,
It's better than fucking having to save scum the entire time just to get the one you want. Because I remember having to retake that thing multiple times just to get a Trico.
yeah, they're just being like, oh, "I don't know what the fuck to answer." Like this is when that game came out. Like the internet was still fairly new, and
Well, even then, like you can look up how to get a certain Pokemon, and it's still extremely vague. Like you're still gonna have to retake it a couple times to figure it out.
they had the weirdest fucking questions too. Like you're in the bathroom, a hand comes out of the toilet. What do you do? Like what? How does that
Yeah.
have anything to do with Pokemon? What Pokemon uses a toilet? I mean,
You remember the early Pokemon when animals existed alongside the Pokemon,
yeah, that was weird. They had
and
like
then
aquariums and shit.
they just kind of forgot about that real quick.
Yeah,
I just want to know what people eat in the Pokemon world.
you don't want to know. Um, but I also did like that the at least with the first entries to the Mystery Dungeon series, there was like an outrageous amount of post game content,
Oh
like
yeah.
to the extreme. Like I actually looked up the like estimated play times for Red Rescue Team recently, and like the base game like story mode is like 15 hours. If you're going for 100% completion with all the post game stuff, it's like well over 200 hours. It's a lot of post
Hmm.
game. But
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot there, and the remake is great. I had a lot of fun with the remake.
I still believe the Explorers like trilogy is considered like a lot of people say is the best in the excuse me, the best in the series.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to find copies of that because I played the originals and then I didn't play any entries until Super Mystery Dungeon, and fuck that game.
Yeah, the 3DS ones are not as popular as the other ones.
I mean the gameplay itself is fine. I don't remember anything about the story, so don't even ask me. But like the essential like building blocks of what makes a Mystery Dungeon game is fine. Excuse me. But the tutorial in Super Mystery Dungeon is like fucking 7 hours long. It's absolutely outrageous. It takes like hours and hours before you can just go and explore a dungeon without it being story related.
Hmm. Yeah, and I remember those games being like super all over the place.
Hmm.
To be honest, the spin-off I remember a lot from back then was the Pokemon Ranger trilogy.
I think I only played the first one of those games, but I had fun with it. The whole concept of a Pokemon game where you are kind of a trainer, but you
You,
don't keep any of your Pokemon.
yeah, you don't catch Pokemon, you're just borrowing them.
Hey, just kind of like, okay, I did like this weird like, and it was very reliant on the touchscreen of the DS,
Yes.
where you like had to like draw circles around a Pokemon in a certain way with like them trying to fight against you, and then you could recruit them, and then but then as soon as you leave the area you're exploring, you're I think Plusle and Mine are the only ones you get to keep permanently.
Yeah. I
Um,
like the idea behind Ranger. Like it was kind of a cool, like different idea. Like
mhm.
they actually tried something, unlike Game Freak, who hasn't fucking tried in years. Um,
Yeah,
I had to, but anyways. um,
and I don't think we've gotten too many other spin-offs since, unless you count Pokemon Go
yeah, I mean
or
there was
Let's Go.
yeah, there was Pokemon Dash. If you remember Pokemon Dash,
I remember it existed. I don't remember anything about it.
it was a racing game where you had to rub the touchscreen to run.
That's okay.
It wasn't good.
Doesn't sound
Oh,
it.
Pokemon Conquest.
What is that?
That was the one that was like that weird tactical RPG that was like a crossover with like the it's some Japanese like tactical series. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's like the most it's just one of the most what the fuck crossovers ever, but it's surprisingly really good.
Hmm. It's interesting.
It's a tactical Pokemon RPG.
Ooh, Pokken tournament.
Oh yeah, I never got that.
It's a bizarre. spin-off. It's a Pokemon fighting game, but the way that like, I don't really particularly care for the structure of it.
I don't like the fight angle, like how they're like angled that way.
Yeah, because it's like whatever like the first player is gets like the focused angle, and then the other player is across, and they have to kind of like weave around it.
It's one of
And the
those
way that
games.
it has like a far away combat and then a close up combat, even though it's still a pretty small area. It's like a really bizarre structure to it.
Yeah, it was one of those ones where I was kind of like, this is an interesting idea, but they completely shat on the local co-op people with the design because it was clearly designed for online multiplayer.
Yeah, I would have liked it a lot better if it was just a straight up like classic 2D style fighting game.
Hmm. Um, did you ever play any of those like Pokemon Rumble World games?
No,
I got one for free on my 3DS once, but I never played it.
I haven't messed with like any like the um what the hell is that one that everyone's playing now? Uh, the one that
Oh,
you can play on the phone, but it's
oh,
also on Switch.
Masters, I think.
Yeah, or no, that's not. What the
No,
hell
no,
is
not
it?
not Masters. Hmm.
I don't remember.
Oh,
I know it's been around for a little bit now, but
Pokemon Shuffle.
no. I know Xander plays it. I don't remember. I'm sure
Um,
who if anybody listens to this, they're probably gonna know exactly what we're talking about. But
See, I remember
um,
Pokemon Masters EX, which was the first major mobile phone game.
hold on.
Which actually was kind of cool, like just as a decent little Pokemon game. But I always remember it because when it came out, the hashtag on Twitter was Pokemon Master Sex.
Pokemon phone game. What the hell is it called? Pokemon Unite.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I never played
That
that.
one. Me neither. Um, but yeah, there's I mean, I guess there are a fair amount of Pokemon spin-off games still. It's just that most of them go to mobile now.
Did you play
Um,
Pokemon Go at all?
when it first came out, yeah, for the first year, I was like super into it.
I remember when we were working at Richards, I came in and there was a person playing Pokemon Go out in the parking lot. I had no idea who they were. This was
Yeah, I
during when I.
actually, I actually, for the first year, I was like, I actually bought my first smartphone specifically for Pokemon Go when I heard it was coming out. Um, and I actually got pulled over by a cop once playing it because, well, not pulled over, I was walking. Um, because this is at the point where I was still working at Cumberland Farms, and I must have been working a late shift. I was covering for somebody or something, and I got out like it was like midnight or like past midnight, and I was walking home, and I of course I had Pokemon Go out because it was the point where I was playing it, and I saw that there was a Vileplume nearby, and I didn't know exactly where it was, but I knew like the hot spots where I was walking where they would generally tend to spawn. So I
Hmm.
was like walking behind a breakfast place, like into the like back parking lot, and a cop happened to be passing by as I was walking back there, and he like pulled over. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Blah blah blah. I was like, I shut up my phone. I'm like, "I'm playing Pokemon." I'm on my walk from home. I just happened to see fucking whatever. He's like, go home. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah,
It was funny.
I'll never forget. I won't say his name because he was someone we worked with. Well, you kind of still do work with him, I think. You know who I'm talking about.
Mhm.
I remember coming into work one night and I see him on a ladder taping his phone to the ceiling fan, and he has the fan set for like the lowest speed setting. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, "What are you doing?" Because I was so just confused. And he's like, "So I'm trying to get eggs in Pokemon Go." And he's like, "You got to constantly be in motion." So I taped my phone to the ceiling fan, and it's going at the slowest speed. And I just looked at him like, I don't have time for this. And I just kept going. I was so because I it was night shift. I was tired as it was, and I just walked in to take over for
Mm,
third shift, and I just see that, and I'm just like, what? I'm like, what the fuck is this?
mm. Yeah, every now and then I take it back out, but it's for the most part I just couldn't care less.
I
Xander's all
remember.
pumped up now because he has an iPhone now, so he plays Pokemon Go off and on now, and he gets really into it.
See, I remember the saddest thing I ever heard was like I was waiting in line at a Dunkin' Donuts, and there were some people in front of me, and I remember they because this was just when Pokemon Go came out, and they were talking about it, and I remember they were joking, like saying like, "Oh, do you guys play Pokemon Go?" And like one of the guys literally goes, "No, because that would require me to go outside." And I went, okay, the world is fucked. And I just walked away
It's
after that.
about right. So yeah, I think that's pretty much at least the main spin-off ones that were worth mentioning. Um, Out of curiosity, just because I've been kind of playing around with emulators and stuff lately, did you ever fuck with ROM hacks for
Uh,
Pokemon?
po- Pokemon Crystal Clear, I think, is my favorite ROM hack ever.
What's the gimmick for that one?
So Crystal Clear is a very cool. I actually have a ROM cartridge of it, which is kind of neat. The
Mhm.
idea of it is it's essentially it's Pokemon Crystal, but they made it an open world game where
Okay.
you can choose. So you can choose either you can play as red, you can play as gold, you can play as crystal, or they actually re-added green slash leaf, depending on what you want to call her. They added her original dummied out sprites from the first game.
That's cool.
So you can pick one of the four protagonists. You can choose which town you want to start in. So say you want to start in like the dragon town from like Crystal, like Johto. I forget the name of it right now.
Uh,
Is it
Blackthorn?
Blackthorn? Say you want to start in Blackthorn. You can start in Blackthorn. Um, you can choose any. So you can choose any starter from like Gen 1 or 2, or it gives you some random selections. Like you can say start with like a fucking tentacool or something.
Hmm.
Um, and what's cool is so you start in, say, Blackthorn, the entire game scales. So like you can go to any gym in whatever order you want, and the game will scale the difficulty from gym to gym. So like the second gym you fight will be slightly harder, the third gym you fight will be slightly harder. So you can go legit anyway. They get rid of HMs entirely, so there's no like obstacles for like travel. You can legit go anywhere.
That's pretty cool.
It is such a cool concept for a ROM hack, just as a like one-off idea.
Yeah.
Um, it's just cool. The only downside is it's based off like a 8-bit game. I kind of wish they'd made like a 16-bit version in the Gen 3 engine, but
There's see, I'm just now starting to kind of fuck around with emulation more.
mm,
And I even I downloaded a GBA emulator on Xander's computer as well because he was asking about it. And I found a few specific Pokemon ROM hacks that I wanted to fuck around with. But the one that he's been messing around with is Emerald X2 or times two.
mm,
Um, and it's an Emerald ROM hack where like they kind of fuck around with a little bit of like the general structure of the game, as far as like the layout and whatnot. But they added Pokemon at the very least all the way up from Gen 8,
mm,
like the Pokemon all the way from up to that point. And they mess with like what spawns where. Like you could catch a Togepi in the first area.
mm,
And there's like all sorts of different Pokemon from different games, and they added like moves from later games and like extra like original sprite animations and stuff like that. Tons of quality of life improvements. Like it's really cool.
mm.
But the one that I've been excited to mess around with, and I've only just kind of barely started about it. I actually mentioned it on the Discord recently. But it's a Yu-Gi-Oh Pokemon ROM hack. It's a ROM hack of Fire Red Leaf Green,
Mm.
but they swapped out all the Pokemon for Yu-Gi-Oh monsters.
That's fun.
And the starters are Paladin of White Dragon, Illusion Magician, and Red Eyes Black Chick. Obviously, I chose Red Eyes Black Chick for my starter. Um, but like, just like going out and starting out, you can go out and you can find like I caught a baby dragon. I
Mm.
caught Beaver Warrior. There's like Silver Fang, like all the classic dual monster cards.
Mm.
And like they like changed out a lot of like the dialogue stuff from like random people you talk to, and they'll talk about the Yu-Gi-Oh monsters and things like that. There's tons of like quality of life improvements, like XP share works the way it does in current Pokemon games.
Mm.
In that, uh, you automatically have the running shoes, and just walking in general will you'll automatically be running.
Nice.
Like, I don't know. There's just they added a ton of cool stuff to it, and like I'm excited. I'm probably gonna end up streaming that.
Mm. That'd be
Because
cool.
that's it's really fun. And there's also another one which I believe I streamed a little bit last weekend.
Oh, the
Where it's
Dragon Ball one with the really bad bad balancing issues.
yeah, that game is not balanced at all because everyone is way stronger than they should be right off the bat.
See, there's a lot of ROM hacks that I remember where it's like there for some reason the Pokemon community just loves their horror ROM hacks where they make the game like unnecessarily dark.
I mean, I'd fuck around with one of those.
I mean, some of them are classics, so some of them are just fucking cringe, like edgelord cringe. But I
I wonder if
remember
there's
like
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say like I remember playing a lot of like Lost Silver, like Creepy Black back in the day.
Mhm. I wonder if there's a ROM hack that swaps out the Pokemon for Digimon.
Probably.
That'd be interesting. I don't know. I'm just like I like that. Those are probably the Pokemon games I'm gonna end up playing is the ROM hacks, just for the fun of it, the novelty of it. Like the Dual Monsters one, like that one is probably what I'm actually gonna play all the way through.
I like the gag ones too, like the Bidoof version where it's just every character's Bidoof.
That's just silly. But yeah,
Um, yeah. Other than that, though, I think we've kind of covered the gauntlet.
for the most part, yeah, I say so.
I mean, we're almost at 2 hours now, so I figured this is probably a best of time as any to cut it. Yeah, it was fun though, reliving all the old Pokemon games.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so once again, guys, thanks for joining us on Geek Addicts. You can find Geek Addicts on all the major podcasting platforms, particularly Apple Podcast and Spotify. And be sure to check us out over on the Superpod Network. That is superpodnetwork.com. You can see the link down below for video watchers. Um, you can find a ton of different shows, blogs we've mentioned earlier, videos. It's a whole bunch of cool stuff. And be sure to check out the other shows on that network, including Super Pod Saga, Super Ghost Radio, Retro Rehab, Tommy's Video Game Ride Along, A Novel Console, Bar Silence, Fine Time, The Elder Trolls Gaming Podcast, Remember 64, Gaming Together, Friday Night Gamecast, and all the GNC shows. I didn't mention them, but I don't want to be a egotist.
Mm.
And with that, everybody, we will see you all next time.
Have a good one.